Is it time to bring something to completion? Is there something or someone to invest in to support your success? Is fear of failure holding you back? Are you trying to do too many things at once? These are all questions and pressures that this cycle of the human design weather for April 10th to 15th, 2025 will bring. Hello, I'm Margot Fraser, your guide through the cosmic weather. As a certified human design professional and intuitive coach, I'm on a mission to help you know, live, and love your true nature. In this podcast, Human Design Weather or Not, we explore the conditioning influences of the planetary motions, the transit field. You can't avoid the conditioning pressures. You'll likely notice their effects playing out around you. But rather than you reacting and being pulled off track, this awareness will empower you to navigate the cycles, staying true to your authentic nature and taking advantage of opportunities when correct for you. All right, well, let's delve into the weather for this cycle. It begins April 10th at 3:19 a.m. and goes until April 15th at 8:56 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Universal time coordinates, that's starting April 10th at 9:19 a.m., going until April 16th at 4:56 a.m. So remember to convert that to your own time zone so that you know when this cycle starts and ends for you. Well, we broke out of a long period of emotionality that the transit field was bringing towards the end of that last cycle. So we get a reprieve this cycle. There's no medium term or long term channels that are being created. We also had ego gate activations for the last two cycles and that highly competitive channel of initiation that was here for all of last cycle. And boy, have we really witnessed that playing out globally in the escalation of the tariffs back and forth, particularly between the US and China. So very interesting to look at the energetic weather and then look at the news to see how it's playing out in the world. All right, well, let's get into the specifics for this cycle. We always start with the Sun Earth activations because that's 70% of the conditioning field. The Sun now has moved into gate 42. This is the trait of growth, of increase, of completion. It's located in the sacral center, which is that motor that generates our vital life force energy and is here to invest that energy into satisfying work. This trait's part of the collective abstract circuitry, the experiential circuitry. That's all about going through cycles of experiences, beginnings, middles, and ends, and then making sense of them, reflecting on them to gain the wisdom. The keynote for this particular trait says the expansion of resources, which maximizes the development of full potential. Well, the expansion of resources is to break out of the logic side, the fixed habits, the patterns, and use this vital energy to really push into something new, to gain a different human experience, which has the potential to bring that wisdom and foster your growth. You can mature through the experiential process, which is why this trait is part of the channel of maturation, along with the gate that it points at, gate 53 in the root center. So it's experiential, and to be able to commit to a new experience and really be in it, you can only go through one experience at a time. That's one of the main rules of thumb of the experiential circuitry. It's rooted, this trait is rooted in having a diversity of experience. And that brings us to another rule of thumb for the experiential circuitry, which is never to repeat. an experience. At the same time, if you go after experiences that aren't correct for you according to your own strategy and authority, you can end up really spreading yourself too thin and using up that vital life force on things that are not aligned for you, that don't really serve you. So the potential opportunities with this trait activation being in the field is this is an energy that brings the pressure to finish things, to bring them to completion. So if you have anything outstanding that you really need to bring to completion, you really need to wrap up, this energy is really going to be very supportive for you. It's also the energy to work towards your growth through experiences. So it will support that as well. The cautions, at the same time, if you go after experiences that are not correct for you, as I mentioned, you can spread yourself too thin and use up that energy in a way that just depletes you and is not satisfying. It's frustrating. If you're not following your strategy and authority, you may also bring something to completion out of this pressure when it's not actually the right time for you to be doing that. The Earth has moved into gate 32, the trait of continuity and duration in the splenic center. That's our most primal awareness center that operates in the now and is associated with survival, health, well-being. Biologically, it's associated with our immune and lymphatic system. Safe for me or not? Healthy for me or not? Now, this is a tribal trait, so carries that underlying theme, like all tribal traits do, of mutual support. You do this for me, I do that for you. And when you think of the tribe or tribal, think of family, community, business, any group that you feel a part of. The keynote for this trait is the only thing that endures is change. Now, this trait is part of the entrepreneurial business side of the tribe. The tribe needs resources, right? We need our material resources in order to have food, have shelter, to build and sustain, the people, the community. The tribe is inherently conservative. So this is a really interesting trait, a really interesting perspective that comes through the tribe. Yeah, we still need change. So this is the real recognition that in order to succeed, you've got to keep up with the times, right? If you become stagnant, if there's no change, you're likely going to fail. You're not going to have that continuity in the business, that survival of the business, and being able to bring in the needed resources. There's going to be no duration, no longevity of the business, of the group, whatever level we're talking about here. And this is a trait that is really wired to remember failures. Every splenic gate carries a primal fear. And here it's the fear of failure. Now, that can be very motivating on one hand, right? It can drive you. But if the fear takes over, it can be very debilitating. It can be overwhelming. So this trait, this whole part of the entrepreneurial side of the tribal circuitry is about maintaining, conserving material success. So this trait carries the potential awareness, an instinct that gets honed with experience to know what and whom to invest in to support the success of the business, of the tribe, of the community, the group, whatever it is. Who has a raw talent, or what can be brought in? What can be invested in that can be developed and transformed to support the tribe, to support the business? So although it's conservative, there's an understanding, there's an awareness with this trait that there is a time when change must happen. And radical conservatism, right? Grasping on to the old ways, holding on, it's going to lead to death of the business, the group, again, whatever level we're talking about here. So there's an understanding that there'll be a point at which change needs to occur or you get left behind. So equally in this trait, like once it's like, yeah, change is needed. I got it. I know what it is. This is what we have to transform in order to keep the continuity of the business, keep it successful. It can happen quite quickly. So although it's the most conservative gait and can have that fear of change, change is in its nature. Therefore, it's really important to delve into the details to support the awareness of who and what to invest in. The potential opportunity that this trait brings is that you may have this knowing, this real smell, this instinct for who and what resources to invest in to support your success or the support of your business or group that you're part of, your tribe. You may gain an understanding of the fear of failure as a motivator. The caution, well, you might have an awareness that change is needed or even inevitable, but with a tendency to just want to like do it, get it done, and not do the necessary investigate, right? You can have a sense that, ooh, this person would be really good or this thing would be really good, but you still got to get into the details to make sure that it's a fit. And if you gloss over the details, eventually there may be a price to pay for that. There could also be potential for being overwhelmed or paralyzed by the fear of failure or the fear of change. When we look at these two traits together, the Sun-Earth positions, it could play out as the changes will allow continuity and can bring a new experience that in turn brings growth. Or you could see that growth is going to require changes to be made. There could be a taking of failure so hard or being so afraid of change that you bring something to completion that actually still has growth potential. Or if you don't delve into the details around what you want to transform in your life to bring that positive change, especially around resources, your growth could stagnate. So just different ways that the keynotes could play out there. All right, let's move into looking at the channels being created this cycle. When the transit field creates a channel, everyone that doesn't already have it in their design is receiving the activation of the related traits and qualities. So it has quite a large impact that way. As I mentioned earlier, we don't have any medium or long-term channels in this particular cycle. We do have one channel that's being created by the transit of the moon, which means it's just a taster. It's just a little sampler because the moon only activates a gate or a trait for about 10 to 11 hours, give or take. So this one's coming in on April 14th at 10:47 a.m., going until 10:10 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Universal time coordinates, that's April 14th at 4:47 p.m., going until the 15th at 4:10 a.m. We have the moon moving into gate 1, the trait of the creative, connecting with its electromagnetic gate 8, the trait of contribution in the throat center. That gate 1 is in the G center, our center of identity, direction, and love. Putting those together, they create the channel of inspiration, the design of the creative role model. It's part of the individual circuitry that can bring through something new and mutative. If you have this channel in your design, you're partly here to be a living example of uniqueness. The channel operates in a pulse of creative inspiration that you have no control over. And this is really bringing something new through. It's not the continuous improvement or the refinement that you see respectively in the tribal and the collective circuitries. It's rooted in the knowing that true creative inspiration is independent of will. You can't just will creative inspiration on demand, although we have lots of jobs in the world where that's supposed to happen, right? It really comes when it comes, the real mutative creative inspiration. The opportunity it brings is to share your uniqueness out into the world. Individuals, they're just here to be themselves in their unique way. And this is really the expression of that without caring whether others follow you or not. Like, I'm just being me. You want to follow, fine. You don't, right? I'm going this way. Come along if you want. Doesn't matter to me. The caution here is that there can be a fear of rejection of your unique contribution and uniqueness. So a holding back instead of expressing it out. There can also be a blurting out here, any of the gates of the throat when there's pressure coming through there, a blurting out of your creative expression when it hasn't been invited. And in that case, it will likely be to the wrong people at the wrong time and isn't going to be recognized. That brings us to our long-term transits. The long-term transits are created by the outer planets and the nodes of the moon. They're here with us for a longer period of time, years in some cases. And so your not self mind, your shadow mind, may start to think that, oh, that's part of me. Oh, I didn't have that trait before. I've got it now. I don't want to let it go. And when it does eventually go out, that can be a little shocking to your system. So you take the wisdom in from it, but don't cling on to it like it's something that you must have. Now, the nodes, which have to do with our environment and our direction, still sitting in gates 36, the trait of crisis, and gate 6, the trait of conflict and friction. Those are in the emotional center. Well, on April 7th, the nodes went direct. So they normally move in the clockwise direction, while all the other planets move through the zodiac in the counterclockwise direction. So they'll move back during this cycle to their usual movement. And so on the 13th, they'll move back into line 5, where they were. Right now, they're in line 6. And then we'll see them on the 13th move back to line 5. So the north node of the moon is about our perspective and direction, what we see when we look out into the world. That's sitting in that gate 36. And we also continue to have Mercury, Venus, Saturn, all activating that trait as well, that trait of crisis. Although Mercury will finally move on to its next gate by the end of this cycle. The north node starts in detriment in line 6 at the start of this cycle. That is called justice. With the detriment, bringing sorrow and cynicism that, sure, we can move through the crisis of inexperience and move to experience, but all that's going to bring is a new kind of crisis. So why bother? On April 13th, it moves into line 5 called the underground, which could have you seeing that no matter what, we can make it through the crisis. We can go through from inexperience to experience. Or there could be this tendency to jump the gun, jump into an experience rather than allowing the change to unfold, the experience to unfold naturally. And that often brings resistance and frustration, possibly anger along the way. Now, Mercury sitting in this trait is going to bring a flavor of lots of talking about, communicating about crisis. Venus brings a flavor. Venus is about our values, the value of crisis, the value of moving through an experience, the value of progress. And Saturn brings a quality of limitation, constraints, discipline, consequences. Saturn is sitting in line 4 called transition, which is all about letting go of the old ways with change. So when we move from inexperience to experience, Let go of the old, right? Allow for the wisdom. Be in the experience for the experience. Don't try and hold on to the old stuff and try and integrate it into the new in some way. To doing so is just going to limit your progress. And if you don't allow the old to drop away with the required changes that the experience brings, Saturn's going to bring consequences, and you might not like them. Now, Saturn can also be helpful. It brings that discipline. It can allow you to be disciplined in moving through change, in moving through an experience and letting go of the old. Both polarities can be there. The south node of the moon has to do with what's in our environment. It's in that gate 6, the trait of conflict and friction. It's starting this cycle in line 6 with its theme of the peacemaker that could bring either an understanding that life is sacred and that's reason enough to end conflict, or the other polarity, it could bring unacceptable conditions for peace that really foil the whole peacemaking process. Then on the 13th, we move into line 5 called arbitration. It has a developmental theme that says we learn with maturity. It says the faith derived from analytical diligence and emotional control that permits a higher authority to judge a conflict. In its exaltation, it says harmony furthered through the avoidance of direct conflict, while the detriment is insensitivity to the concerns of others in conflict, where a party to arbitration sees itself as the best possible judge and will only accept judgment if it is the victor. So real win-lose, winner-loser kind of thing going on here in the detriment. On a personal level, if you do have a situation that needs peacemaking in the first part of the cycle or arbitration as we move back into line 5 on the 13th, well, that could be really supportive for you. Jupiter sitting in gate 45, the tribal trait of the gatherer in the throat center. This is the tribal leadership trait. It's like the voice of the CEO, for example, of a business. It's the only voice of the tribe. It's the voice of I have, I don't have, we don't have. And it's sitting in line 1. And line 1 always sets the foundation for any trait. Here it's called canvassing. And canvassing is educating and gathering support in doing that. It could bring attention to education, formal and informal, with that fundamental understanding that the tribe, the business, the community can all rise up if everybody is more educated. Or, in its detriment, there could be this real alienation of others out of the pressure of trying to convert them to one's way of thinking. Or, you've got to align with my beliefs, my way of thinking, or else you're out. And that can really create separation instead of gathering together. This is Jupiter, so there could be an expansion of either polarity of these expressions. At a personal level, there could be a real opportunity to gain support by educating others, but just watch that you're not trying to force your opinions, your beliefs on others, or you may lose support rather than gain it. This trait can also be possessive, and that doesn't always have to be unhealthy, right? If we possess things, material things, especially as a tribal leadership trait, we can be very generous with that and sharing it with others in our group, in our tribe. It will bring attention as well because the tribe is materially oriented, making sure that everyone has the resources they need. It's going to bring attention to material resources. You may feel that pressure, the expansion of the pressure to, geez, do I have the resources I need? What do I have? What don't I have? What do I need to shift in order to get what I need? That type of thing could be there. Uranus position is in gate 8, the trait of individual contribution in the throat. That's the one that's connecting with that Moon's position that we talked about. So, well, with Uranus, it could bring an unusual contribution to the whole through you. And already it's unusual because it's an individual trait. Individual traits are not here to be like others. So there could also be here this fear of loss of individuality, because once you share your individual contribution, it's not technically yours anymore, right? Once it gets taken up by others. And yet at the same time, this is the whole point of the individual circuitry, is to bring sparks through of something new that will get taken up by the tribe and the collective. Neptune, sitting in gate 25 in the G center, the individual trait of the spirit of the self, of innocence and universal love, or the polarity. It's in line 3, called sensibility, with a developmental theme that says the recognition that innocent action does not in itself guarantee success, right? We can learn that over time. It's the third line trial and error process. Sometimes we take action on something, it's completely innocent, and it doesn't work out. Now, with Neptune, this is a lesson that Neptune could veil from you, kind of having you bang your head against the wall, or it could unveil equally. There can be a real resilience here that allows you to withstand failure and not let it negatively impact you. Hey, sometimes things don't work out. I was doing that innocently. I didn't work out, but yeah, that's okay. In its detriment, though, this is the gate of the spirit of the self. And there can be a loss of spirit, a loss of innocence through that trial and error process. We tend to, unfortunately, really beat up third lines, and people that have third lines in their profile, they go through their trial and error process. That needs to be nurtured because they can find the most efficient ways of doing things, but often it gets beaten down. Oh, you made it, that they're always making mistakes, right? And that beating down, it can lead to depression. It could lead to even, taking now not innocent action, taking criminal action instead. These are all things that can come out of the inability to accept failure and taking it very personally, having that spirit of the self broken. All right, Pluto sitting in gate 41, the trait of contraction and decrease in the abstract experiential circuitry. It's the gate of daydreaming, of fantasizing about the next experience that you want to have. It's sitting in line 2, called caution, which says, as a developmental theme, humanism tempered by pragmatism. It's got to be practical. It's part of the collective circuitry. So fantasies here can be something to do with service, with helping others. It is the collective, but not actually taking any action on it. You could want others to recognize your feelings and dreams out of this pressure in the expectation that you're going to get something out of it, probably recognition. Remember, for any of these traits, that if you don't have them in your own design, they're just pressure from the transit field, something to potentially learn from. You can observe it playing out around you. You can learn from it, but whether there's actually something for you to do out of it is according to your own strategy and authority, rather than letting this transit field puppet you. Okay, that brings us to the end of the cosmic weather for this cycle. If you want to run your own chart, you can go to jovianarchive.com. If you're new to human design and you want to understand more of the basics of the chart, maybe a little bit of background on human design at a very high level, you can grab my free Human Design Basics mini course. It's at margotgfraser.com/human-design. If you enjoyed this podcast, I would be so grateful if you'd give it a like and consider subscribing. All right, well, enjoy the break from the emotionality in the field. If it's correct for you to bring something to completion or to invest in something or someone, this could be an excellent cycle to do that. Watch for, though, bringing something to completion or investing in someone or something prematurely. If you're feeling an amplified fear of failure or change, recognize that it's in the field. Okay, just sink into your grounding, into your own strategy and authority. Hone your connection to that for your own correct decision making. All right, well, have a great cycle. Be kind to one another, and may you know, love, and live the magic of your true nature. Until next time, bye for now.